This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. A lot of the yarn we buy has to be rewound before we can knit or crochet with it. Here's an example of a yarn that came in a hank, and it has to be opened and put on a swift and rewound. And then here's an example of a yarn that came in a little ball, and you have to find the center on that and rewind it, and you have to get the tangles out. Now, almost any time you buy skeins of yarn that have been on a shelf a while or in a store a while, they're going to have some tangles in them. Also, before you work with them, it's kind of nice to know if you've got any knots in there. Now, I prefer a center pull ball. Here's a center pull ball that I wound. It's pretty round and it's cute. These are nice to display, and it pulls right out of the middle, no problems, knits really smoothly. It does not roll around on the floor. It does not tangle. I tuck the outer end in so it doesn't come undone on the outside. It is not too tightly wound. A lot of times beginners wind their yarn too tight and it crushes the yarn. It takes the loft out of the yarn and removes the elasticity of the yarn. It can ruin the yarn to wind it really tightly. So many people use yarn winders. I have a lot of yarn winders. They're in my knitting room, and I've also had yarn wound at the yarn shop where I might buy it. However, the yarn shop's not handy, and yarn winders are an expense. Also, they might not be with you at the time. Even if you have one, if you're traveling, if you're camping, you might not have one. So wouldn't it be nice to have these pretty little center pull balls next to you in the car, on the airplane, or with you when you're camping? So here's an easy way to make center pull balls, and it uses the idea of an old-fashioned nostepinne. A nostepinne is a wooden dowel, oftentimes a really pretty wooden dowel. Here's an example of some commercially available, beautifully finished wooden dowels. They have different colors, and they're smooth, they're sanded, they're nice. You hold the handle and you make your center wide skein on the long straight part of the dowel. These are only about $20 to buy. I don't happen to own one. So here's how you can do your own center pull balls at home with a fancy bit of equipment. This is nothing but a toilet paper cardboard center. Paper towel centers work really well also. I took a little 1/4 inch cut right here in my paper towel roll. Let me show you how to wind the ball. I have seen people wind a nostepinne in a really artistic way, but I just want to knit and crochet without problems, and I want a pretty little ball. I know what'll work, and I know how much effort I should put into it. So I'm just going to catch the end of the yarn in that little slot I cut and put my thumb in there. That's an easy way to start. Now, I've seen people do all kinds of, fancy beginnings. I don't do a fancy beginning. I just wind a little bit in the middle, like that, so that I have a start. There are two basic methods of winding a center pull ball, but either one depends on you not winding too tightly. Just be gentle. I just wind a bunch in the middle, but then if you want it to be a very flat cake, keep all of your winds really shallow. They're almost straight around the tube. And every so often I turn the tube. But if you want a rounder ball, like my center pull balls, which are pretty round, then what you can do is take a little deeper angle, and you can turn it in either direction, and I usually turn it this way. And I'm not watching where I put every single line of yarn. I just wind a bunch, and I go fairly fast, and then I turn after a while. I know from experience that this will work fine and that I don't have to watch and make sure that I put every single strand down perfectly, I can just really wind globs on. And in fact, I could get distracted and wind a whole lot in one spot and it wouldn't even matter. It's so nice to know in life what you can get away with. So keep this simple, folks. This is simple. This is also a very useful technique when you want to rip out. You can pull a couple of yards out at a time and then wind it by hand and rip it out. It's very important as a knitter or a crocheter to be willing to rip. You want a quality product, and to get a quality product you have to have the patience to do things twice once in a while. Do it first way, the wrong way, learn from it, do it second time, the right way. Anyway, this goes fast, and in no time at all, it will seem that I have my whole ball wound. As I wind, if there's a knot or a flaw in the yarn, I'm going to feel it. And I could stop, and if I had to do a splice because there was a knot, I could do the splice. Or if there was a tangle, what I usually find are tangles, I could untangle it and then go on. Then when I knit or crochet, I know there aren't any knots or tangles. I can just relax about that. Sometimes I bump into the tube, but it doesn't really matter because it's just cardboard. It isn't going to hurt my hand or anything. Take that last little end, and you can tuck that into some of your winds. That way, when this ball is in your knitting basket, it's not going to come undone. Then you just take this out of the little slot and pull the tube out, and look at your beautiful ball of yarn. You're going to pull from the center hole. Now, having that good-sized center tube helped keep me from winding it too tightly. This will allow it to relax and use up a little bit of this space. So here's my beautiful center pull ball, ready to go, ready to display in a basket. Isn't that homey to have a basket of hand-wound yarn? So try this little trick. I think you'll really like it.